without further ado, I have a very good friend, a very inspiring woman, a founder, a leader, a mom, and a big sister. All right. So her name is Olivia Ling, and she is from Cebu, but currently she's in New Zealand. She's the founder of Poppies and owner of Poppies, but below her belt, she got a few more businesses under her as well in F&B and fitness. So just for me to share a little bit, Olivia is a strong believer in empowering a generation of young, socially responsible entrepreneurs, a strategic thinker focused on planning for the future of her businesses and creating a dynamic, creative workplace for her employees. Understands that brand building and corporate social responsibility are vital to success. Public speaker and avid philanthropist. So allow me to have Olivia online. Hi,
Hi,
Olivia.
hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, good. I just want to thank Lena. I caught the last part of her presentation. I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to practice my V pose and my affirmations in the bathroom every morning before I come out to see the world. Thank you, Lena.
So, Olivia, I will share the screen for you, and then please let me know when to go next, and also allow. It would be great you can share a little bit of yourself before you go into your sharing.
Okay, sure. No need to share the screen yet, Mel. You can share the screen towards the end.
Okay,
I
sure,
think
thanks.
I'll be talking at the beginning first, and
Okay.
talk a little bit about my topic first, and then I'll introduce myself a little bit more. So I was very excited when I heard from you guys what my topic was going to be. So my topic is going to be what advice I would have given a 20-year-old me. So I thought to myself, this is fantastic. It's a chance to distill salient pieces of advice from my life experiences so far that I didn't know the first time around. And hopefully my lessons could help one of you who are embarking on the journey of starting or building your career. I also thought this would be a great way for me to consolidate a cheat sheet for my kids on life and career advice. I think to myself, I don't sit down often enough and talk to them about all these things. And I thought, fantastic. This presentation is going to force me to sit down and write the top 10 most important pieces of advice for my kids and then for you guys listening as well. Problem is, as I started to mull the topic over in my head in the weeks leading to today's presentation, I realized something which as a parent is actually quite ironic. What I realized was that in fact, I had known all along what I should be doing. I had been given sage advice by my parents, my mentors, by all the business books I had read, all through my academic life and at the early start of my career. The 20-year-old me, in fact, had really heard it all and knew it all, like many of you out there. I had just chosen to follow some of the advice, ascribe little or no importance to other advice, and completely ignore others. This irony wasn't lost on me. Being a parent, I find myself repeating the same advice, sometimes 100 times to my children every day, parroting the same pearls of wisdom, wondering if anything is actually sinking in. So now that we've established that this isn't rocket science, I'm not going to tell you anything today that's going to blow your mind. I'm not going to be reinventing the wheel. Let's frame things a little differently. Let's talk today instead about what the 20-year-old me already knew and in retrospect, maybe should have paid a little bit more attention to. So this is going to be your cheat sheet today. What are those bits of advice that you hear all the time that you should actually jot down, read frequently, remind yourself of, and really, really try to put into action and practice? So in fact, I'm going to consolidate like a top 10 best hits chart for you. But before I do that, I want you to just do a quick exercise for me. If you could jot down on a piece of paper next to you what you think the 10 pieces of business and career development advice you'd be giving yourself right now. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. Don't overthink it. Just think about the advice that you hear, that your teachers give you, that your family give you, that the business books you read give you, the courses you've studied give you, and then just jot down 10 pieces of advice for your career and for your personal development. There's a reason for this exercise, and I'll tell you at the end. Okay, so hopefully everyone's had enough time. If you haven't, as I'm talking, you can think of things and then jot those down as well. Um, Before I start with my top 10 list, Malcolm's asked me to give you a little bit more background about myself. Malcolm has kindly introduced me, but I will delve a little deeper so you understand the life experiences that my advice is drawn from. As Malcolm mentioned, I'm originally from Cebu. I was born in Singapore, and when I was 2 years old, I moved back to Cebu, and I went to Methodist Primary School. When I was 11 years old, my parents decided that they were going to send me to New Zealand to study. So I came to New Zealand on my own at 11, and I was enrolled in an intermediate school here. And then subsequent to that, I attended a high school here. So upon graduating high school, I had to decide what career I wanted, because that was going to decide what I studied at university. I come from a family that has a very strong business background, so it was quite clear and quite obvious to me that it would be a Bachelor of Commerce. So I sat down and told my father, that I was going to apply for a Bachelor of Commerce. And he said to me, no, you will graduate far too young. You'll only be 19, barely 20 when you graduate. So you need another degree. So he gave me two options, doctor or lawyer. And without thinking about it, I immediately said, lawyer. And the reason is not because I had a great affinity for law, not because I was terribly drawn to it. I'm just terrified of blood. So med school was not going to be an option. So off I trotted to Auckland University, and I studied a commerce and law degree. In retrospect, it was probably one of the most important things I've ever done for myself. I think the law degree, even though I was never planning to practice, and even though I've forgotten much of the black letter of the law, I think it taught me invaluable skills, taught me excellent research skills, taught me really good problem solving skills, and it really matured the way I thought and the way I looked at a problem. And then the papers that I took within my law degree all complemented commerce. So I took contract law, commercial law, and things like that. So after graduating at Auckland University, I then did my chambering in Auckland. And when I finished my chambering, I was finally free. I was free to start my real career. So I had had a long think about it, and I decided that what I was interested in was really luxury retail, and specifically in the jewelry arena. I'd like to go to the Gemological Institute of America, which was in New York, and I'd like to study to be a graduate gemologist. So for those of you who don't know what GIA is the world's foremost authority in grading diamonds and colored stones. So the graduate gemology diploma that I got after studying there allowed me to sort and grade colored stones and diamonds. So after graduating that in New York, I was lucky enough to get my first job in New York with a wonderful jewelry company. They were a high-end luxury design company in New York, and we had some fantastic clients, and it was a really good few years, and I learned a lot. But because of untimely issues like the advent and aftermath of September 11th, New York just became a really difficult place to live in. And I realized how much stress I was giving my parents by being there. So I decided that I was going to move back to Asia. I sent my resume to a corporate headhunter and asked for a position back in Asia. So quite quickly, I got a phone call to say that I could go for an interview in Shanghai. The interview in Shanghai was for a firm called Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. They're a large group, and the position that I would be applying for would be specifically for Louis Vuitton. So Louis Vuitton China had previously been under the Asia Pacific region, but they decided China was such a big market that they were going to remove it from Asia Pacific and become a standalone region. In order to do that, they needed to set up like headquarters in Shanghai. So I flew into Shanghai, had the interview, and very, very luckily secured the job. And the gambit of the job was to take care of ready-to-wear, shoes, jewelry, and watches. And basically the reason I got the job was they were looking for somebody who could speak English, who could speak Mandarin, who could speak French, and then had a jewelry background. So I was quite lucky. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I spent 3 years in Shanghai, and it was a really dynamic environment, a superb city to work in, a very, very fast-paced industry to be in. And I learned probably so much in those 3 years that have stood me in really good stead for the rest of my career. I had to leave Shanghai because my late father passed away, and that's how I ended up back home in Sarawak, and how I met Malcolm and Clara and all these wonderful people. When I came back, I spent the first year really taking care of family business and my late father's affairs. And then after that, that's where I really began my journey as an entrepreneur. So for those of you who know Cebu, you probably know that it's not luxury capital of the world. And whatever I had learned in New York and Shanghai, selling luxury handbags, luxury jewelry, and luxury watches, probably wasn't going to cut it in Cebu. So I did what all entrepreneurs do. I sat down and I identified a problem. And after I identified a problem, I set about trying to solve this problem. So what was the problem? The problem I had noticed was here I was in my 20s, late 20s, with a baby in tow. I had all these girlfriends around me who were young moms, pregnant moms, soon-to-be moms, or moms with multiple little kids. And they were all facing the same problem as me. They couldn't buy any high-end imported safe baby goods in Cebu. So you have to remember, this is before AirAsia. This is back in the days of mass airlines where air tickets were really expensive. We had to fly out to Singapore, we had to fly out to KL, and we had to cart all these things back. And back in those days, you couldn't buy extra luggage. So you just had to pay through your nose, whatever penalties you ended up having when your luggage ended up weighing like 50 kilos. So that's how the concept of Poppies was born. So Poppies is a one-stop mommy and baby store, and it really was set up in order to solve that problem. And then in my years operating Poppies, we carried lots of different brands within the store. And through networking with these brands and having a relationship with them, they came to us and gave us opportunities to open standalone stores for them, which is how FitFlop came about and which is how Samba came about. So in Samba, we retail Ipanema shoes, which are footwear from Brazil. After spending quite a few years in retail back home, I had the very lucky opportunity to work with a few really good friends and make our first foray into the F&B business. So we opened 2 restaurants in Kuching, we opened 2 cafes, and then we opened a food truck, and the food truck is called the Food Chow because we are all Food Chow, pun intended. And then from there, we opened another restaurant in Green Heights Mall called Wonder Boom. So this little foray into F&B was really good for all of us. We had to learn, we had to reskill, we had to learn to create new menus, and we had to learn to create like a whole new skill set, especially when we opened Wonder Boom. From there, how I met Malcolm is I have a personal training studio called Rebel, and Malcolm and I both enjoy our exercise and our different types of sports and promoting sports to youth. So we really connected on that level. Other than that, what's really important to me are the CSR projects I work on. So one in particular is the Penang Women's Project. I think it's very important to give back to the community that you work in. And Poppies works very closely with the Penang Women's Project to provide platforms to sell their handmade goods. And then we also work, because of our networking and our relationships with other designers, we're able to work together with the Penang Women's Project and collaborate with local designers and come up with a one-off kind of Poppies exclusive pieces. Other than that, I do a little bit of speaking, public speaking. The topics I usually speak around women's empowerment, brand building, corporate social responsibility, and I do some mentoring projects as well. So now that you know a little bit about me, it's time for me to start talking to you about our top 10 best hits chart. So my number 10 piece of advice that I would have given a 20-year-old me would be to set goals to achieve. It's really, really easy to get tied up in the little picture with day-to-day work that needs to be completed, especially if you're in an industry like mine that is very operational. So when you deal with operations, days tend to slip into weeks, which tend to slip into months, which slip into years. And before you know it, you've had a very, very busy career, but a question mark over how successful that career has actually been. So for me, it's very important to have a daily to-do list, and that helps me get through what I needed to do today, but it helps me not lose sight of the big picture and to be constantly moving towards achieving my monthly, quarterly, and yearly goals. So I have a to-do list, and then those are these operational items that have to get whacked off today. Then I work on some weekly things, I work on some monthly things, and some yearly goals. So that kind of gets revised every single day. And if I don't do it today and it gets moved to tomorrow, then that's also a mental reminder to myself that I haven't done it. As an employee, which many of you will be when you graduate and leave school, it's important to remember that you're not being paid for working hard or for staying busy, right? At the end of the day, what really matters to your employer is how you're contributing to fulfilling the company's goals and missions, both short-term and long-term. Therefore, you have to keep in mind that you're actually being paid to deliver on clearly defined goals, and that significantly impacts the company's performance. You have to understand the overall mission and the vision of the company, and if you don't understand what your short-term and long-term goals are, you really need to sit down with your manager or your boss and find these out. Having a goal-oriented mindset will help you to achieve your career success, no matter where you are on the corporate ladder. If, like me, you're running your own businesses, goal setting is even more important for yourself and your team. A business with no goals will fail to thrive. You're not going to get anywhere. My ninth piece of advice to myself would be to communicate well. And if you don't communicate well, learn to communicate well. Communication is key to an employee's and a company's success. If your employer has to keep coming to you asking for a status report of what you're doing or where you're at with something, you're not doing everything you could be doing. The idea is to be proactively communicating with your boss. Let them know when a task is done and move on to what needs to be done next. You also need to learn to communicate with your colleagues and your clients. A lot of businesses that have a great idea or a great product, they actually end up failing because they don't communicate internally and they don't communicate with their customer. So they end up losing sight and not understanding what the customer really needs and wants. So communication is a two-way street. Communication is as much about listening and asking questions as it is about speaking. There are also lots of nonverbal cues when it comes to being a good communicator that you really have to learn. So if any of you would like any exercises on communication, improving your communication or nonverbal cues, you can drop me an email after this and I'll send you some through. As a business owner over the years, I've learned the value of communicating with my staff. They are usually the ones working on the front line and they're the ones interacting with the customers. They tend to hold really valuable information about what the customer's objections are and what their wants and needs are. So often when a product is moving quite slowly in the shop, what it needs me to do, pick up the phone, call one of the sales team down at the shop and try to understand what's going on. Usually they will be the ones that can help me identify what is happening. And there's often a solution that can be implemented without me having to rush to do a sale and a price drop to clear stock. Communicating directly with your customers is also a very important thing. We noticed when we were in the store speaking to first-time moms, that they were very confused about certain products. And one of these product categories was breast pumps. So they didn't know as a first-time mom, number one, do I even need a breast pump? Or do I come and buy it when I discover I need it? Or do I have to prepare before I have the baby? Number two, do I buy a manual one or do I buy an automatic one? Number three, what brand do I buy? Number four, do I buy a single pump, a double pump? And people were just so confused that breast pump sales were actually quite low. So as a result, we decided to put on informational evenings that would give a lot of data out there and a lot of information to first-time moms, not specifically pushing one brand, but it would help them make their decisions as to what suited them. And what we noticed after that is like a huge uptake in breast pump sales in the shop. So communication with your customer is really important. Whether you own your own business or you work for someone else, you need to start communicating effectively. And like everything else in life, this is a skill. It can improve on it. Number 7 on my list was actually my dad's favorite. Work like you own the company, and one day you will. Make yourself indispensable in your role. Make sure you're that person that the boss or the manager or your department head cannot live without. Learn everything you can and never be afraid to work from the bottom up. Understand your job, your role, your company, your industry, your competitors. If you don't know something, learn it. If you want to stand out and get ahead at work, you need to start thinking like the business owner, and you'll see how quickly your perspective about your job and your career changes. Business owners don't check out at 5 o'clock because, hey, it's the end of the day and the workday's over. Business owners don't take days off and stay at home and binge watch Korean dramas on Netflix. It just doesn't happen. Business owners, they don't get caught up in like the minutiae of office politics. And what's the reason behind this? Because they have much bigger goals that they are focused on. They simply don't have time for these things. When you start working and thinking like a business owner, you will be noticed by your employer. And that's what I've noticed in my experience as well. I'll give you an example. At Amazon, the staff took out all of the light bulbs out of the vending machines. And that saved the company over $20,000 a year in electrical bills. So you know who noticed? CEO Jeff Bezos immediately noticed this. And the key players that have put this kind of idea into motion in the company were immediately rewarded. And more importantly, they were now on Jeff Bezos's radar. So start thinking and working like a business owner today. It will make you a more valuable employee, and it will give you some idea of what it's like to run your own business one day. The next piece of advice, I think, which is really important to you guys, because Malcolm and Clara were telling me a lot of you are still at university or finishing up, is to be passionate about what you do. This means picking your career wisely. You will excel in doing what you love, as what you love is generally what you're good at. Okay, if you're in an industry or job, or you've done a degree, for example, that you're not enjoying, don't fret. It's never too late to reinvent and re-educate yourself. So an ex-LB colleague of mine just told me he's been in sales his whole life. He's in his early 30s. He told me last week that he's going to leave the sales industry and he's going to go back to school and he's going to study IT. And when he comes out, he's going to set up his own IT business. That's a huge change. You know, you don't have to be afraid to change fields. Sometimes this change may happen organically and gradually, but sometimes it may happen quite abruptly. Imagine if you were a commercial airlines pilot in 2020. Okay, that career change is probably going to be pretty abrupt. Having a career that you're passionate about really makes a difference between like an unbearably long day and having a life that you actually feel like you've had a sense of accomplishment and achieved something. Our careers span decades and you spend so much time at work. They really do define a huge part of who we are or who we become. If you're not sure what your passion is, then don't feel bad. A lot of people aren't. It can be hard to sort through all the issues that you are passionate about and zone in on one. Sometimes it's hard to even find one. And it's also hard to find a job that you're good at, right? There is no shame in being unable to nail down your passion, much less apply it to your career. If you're not sure about where your passion lies, ask yourself these following questions. Okay, ask yourself, right? Not other people, because I find very often we ask other people and we don't listen to ourselves. Ask yourself, what do you really feel passionate about? You need to be quiet and you need to listen to your own thoughts. You know, no filters, no kidding yourself, not what your parents want, not what your teachers want, not what you've been told you should be doing, but what you are really passionate about. Secondly, you got to take that passion and think, where can this lead me? Try to turn your passion into a career. Don't pick a career and then try to work backwards and turn that into a passion. Trust me, it hardly ever works. I have cousins in their 60s who have been accountants all their lives and are retiring, and they've attempted to make it their passion their whole lives, and it really hasn't worked. Another tactic is to find a job or a side hustle that you think you're interested in and give it a go. Okay, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that can happen? You can realize you don't like it, and then you try something else. So this is something I did. When I was at university, I kind of decided that I was interested in luxury retail. I decided I was interested in following like the jewelry avenue. But before I rushed off to GIA in America and spent all my parents' money, you know, like living in New York and studying in New York, I thought, okay, I better make sure this is my passion. So I took a part-time job at a local jewelry company in Auckland, and I worked there for 2 years to see if I really did like this. And sure enough, I did. At the end of 2 years, I was really sure that I was making the right decision, that this is really what I wanted to spend my life doing. Lastly, and this is key, especially for the Asian families out there, you have to figure out how you're going to support yourself. Okay, I think it's really important to enjoy the work that you do, but it's also important to be realistic and think, you know, and make sure that what you're planning to do can actually create comfort for you at the end of the day. You're also much more likely to have your family on board to support you if you've thought this through. The next piece of advice to the 20-year-old me, and Malcolm knows this well, is to be in it to win it, okay? I'm very competitive. The work you produce is your calling card. Take pride in it and own it. Never put your name to substandard work. Never be unprepared. All you have is your integrity and your reputation. Never compromise it. If you're going to undertake a task, give it 110% or don't do it at all. You're in this to win it. You're not here for participation points. It's not kindergarten. No one's going to give you a gold star for participating, right? Make sure that you are always known as the achiever, the person who can deliver and will deliver every single time. Also, never be the smartest person in the room. Firstly, if you're an entrepreneur, you have the business idea. Okay, so you want to be hiring the best website developer, the best sales manager, the best marketer that your HR dollar can buy. This is how your business is going to become successful. Another reason is that you are the average of the 5 people that you hang out with. I'm sure you've heard this expression more than once in your life. This is probably one of those pieces of advice that I didn't understand, was as important as it actually is, but it really is, and it's so true. If you surround yourself with dynamic, creative, and successful people, then that energy is going to rub off on you and it's going to lift you higher. I'm really blessed to have working relationships with some fantastic women who own some fantastic brands. We share a multi-brand workspace in Kuching, and it's really such a dynamic and positive environment, and it really pushes you to reach your full potential. These are the types of people that you want to surround yourself with. Another great piece of advice I've held onto through the years is to upskill and to never stop learning. To excel in your career, you have to be willing to learn. No matter what university you graduated from, no matter how great your grades are, real life, professional life is going to be very, very different from college. Be prepared to have a million questions pop up every day that you don't know the answers to. So you need to show management that you are coachable, that you're paying attention, and that you're always willing to learn new things. For your personal career development, you have to keep learning. You learn and you upskill, and that's crucial for you to stay relevant in your industry. You don't want to be the last physical encyclopedia salesman, knocking on doors, going door to door, trying to sell volumes and volumes of heavy books. I've had to embrace TikTok and understand that for some of my businesses, this is how we're going to connect with Generation Z and market our products to them. And the fact that you guys are here, tuned in today to what is quite a long day and listening, and means that you're willing to learn and receive more information, which I think is a great thing. It's a great start already. Another key piece of advice is to network. Networking is really, really key. Networking is a process of building relationships, and the strongest relationships are actually built over a period of time. Having a good network, this is key. Having a good network will help you identify interesting and relevant opportunities. A lot of my collaborations from my career have actually come about through the time that I've spent networking with people inside and outside my industry. Active professional networking is vital to your career growth. So you actually have to put time aside and you actually have to focus on it and see it as a task. You could join a networking group, a professional group, or a social group. I know many of you are shuddering when I say networking because it sounds cheesy. It sounds like you're going to have to go to all these events and it sounds like you're going to have to promote yourself. However, despite however off-putting it may make you feel, networking is really important, and it's about building long-term relationships and help solidify your reputation with this network as well. It can also give you a huge competitive advantage in your career. Another piece of advice is something my mom always used to tell me. She read it from somewhere, held on to it, and has been telling us nonstop about it for years. And it's that success is 10% talent and 90% hard work. So you have to be disciplined, you have to be consistent, and you have to pray for a little good luck. Talent is that hidden factor, and it's something of a wild card that can be used as an edge to succeed. However, it's just nothing without hard work. Hard work is that strengthening factor that keeps you going and performing at high levels for longer periods. Talent gives us a spark, right? But hard work allows us to create that flame that's going to burn throughout a successful career. I'm the best example of this. I studied a conjoint degree and had to keep up a high GPA to stay in the programs, and I had to work really, really hard at it. And I'd see other students cruising by, and it seemed like it was so easy for them. I like to think that I was blessed with a decent IQ. Okay, maybe not the sharpest tool in the shed, but probably not the bluntest tool. But I've always had to work really hard and be really disciplined in order to succeed. It's never just come like that. It's never just been manna falling from the heavens. I have to work for it. Hard work beats talent every time on its own. If you're lucky to have enough of both, if you've got, if you work hard and you have a lot of talent, then success is going to be inevitable. So come and look for me for a job if you happen to be somebody in one of those categories. Another really good piece of advice is to find a good mentor early on in your career. So I was lucky enough to meet my mentor early on in my time at LV. My mentor was my direct manager, and we worked closely together, spent a lot of time together. So I probably learned from her in 3 years more than I learned at university and more than I learned from any business book I've ever read. After leaving LV, she's still been a sounding board and a key source of guidance in my career. So you might be lucky and be able to identify a few different mentors throughout your career. So well done, everyone. Hope you're still awake. We have made it to number 1, the most important piece of advice I would give a 20-year-old me. So never be scared to fail. Be brave. You are stronger than you think. Failure is inevitable on the path to success. The key is what you take away from the situation and that you come back stronger and smarter. Every failure is a chance to learn and grow. I was recently reading about post-traumatic growth, and it's really, really powerful. There is nothing more empowering for you than understanding how strong you are and knowing that you'll be able to face and overcome any adversities that come your way. That confidence will allow you to deal with all obstacles and any obstacles that come your way. The pandemic has showed us this, really, right? It's showed us that we will learn to pivot, we will learn to think on our feet, we will be pragmatic, and we will problem solve. We'll be resilient, and we will survive. We have a joke at the office, and it's be a cockroach, because cockroaches survive everything. Okay, now that we've completed our top 10 list, I also wanted to touch on a few personal lessons that I've learned along the way. I think the first lesson is that it's really important to ask for help and accept help when you need it. This doesn't make you weak. Only really strong people know when enough is enough and they really need help. Secondly, learn to be kind to yourself. You're only human. Learn to be able to slow down, sit down, pat yourself on the back, and congratulate yourself for how far you've come. And lastly, you need to learn to find your balance. So as women, we have increasing pressure to perform in the workplace, to perform and excel academically, to manage a household, to be a supportive spouse, to be a good mother. And it's really a lot to manage with only 24 hours in a day. So find your way to release stress and practice self-love. How you do this is personal to each and every one of us. Personally, I need travel to spark creativity. I need me time at the gym to de-stress, and to be happy, I need to surround myself with, my village of my happy people. So before I wrap up, I thought it'd be interesting to compare my list to the advice of other successful women out there. So what I wanted to know is, would our advice be similar? So I reached out to women whom I respect and admire in different industries, who have had very different backgrounds from each other and from me, and they've had different life experiences. And I asked them for just one piece of advice they would have given a 20-year-old them. Mel, can we see the first slide of Melinda? Can we? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so that's Melinda Lui. She is Malaysia's international award-winning leading female fashion designer. And she shifted in 2020 very quickly from designing ball gowns, right, to spearheading a campaign under Moda for Malaysian designers to cut, sew, and deliver PPE gear for our frontliners. So her advice to a 20-year-old self would be to continue pursuing your dream. Walk the path you have chosen with confidence. Sometimes it may feel that the whole world is against you, but you will succeed. Your parents may be a bit skeptical, but they will be your biggest supporters along your path to success. Travel more, see the world, and open your mind. Okay, the next lady that I spoke to, now can we see the next slide? Okay, is Danielle Graham. Danielle Graham is an international supermodel, and she's the former face of Olay. She has reinvented herself later in her career as Asia's Nigella Lawson. She's a domestic goddess and has now authored her own cookbook and created her own line of cooking utensils, which is quite different from what she was doing, as her main career as a supermodel. Her advice to herself is to trust and believe in yourself. Dare to think big and take chances. Work hard and be consistent. Have a positive attitude and always be kind to everyone. The last lady I spoke to was someone called Nikki Connors. So Nikki Connors is also known as New Zealand's real estate queen. She's been divorced. She was left almost penniless with a baby in tow. And now she's known as a real estate queen and is running coaching seminars teaching women to build wealth. She's also written a book, and you're going to love the title of this book. It's called Failing Fabulously. So her advice would be, never be afraid to fail. It's just another life lesson. You live and die in this industry based on your integrity. Can we switch to the last slide now? Okay, so it's interesting, right? So now I want you to look at your top 10 list as well. So what I found interesting was, regardless of our backgrounds, our career paths, and our very different experiences, the advice that I gave you and then these three ladies gave you are actually very, very similar. They're pretty much the same. So look through the list that you wrote when we first started this sharing session, and you'll be surprised that they're actually very similar things. So I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. It's just that these are the things that you really want to hold on to. There's so much advice out there. There's so many things that go around the place that you have to try and retain in your head. But these are really the top 10 things that if you want to develop yourself professionally and you want to see your career grow, these are the 10 things you really need to hold on to. You need to set goals. You need to learn to communicate. You need to work like you own the company, and one day you will. You need to be in it to win it. Network. Create a career you're passionate about. Surround yourself with smart and successful people, and never stop learning. Stay curious. Be disciplined, consistent, and resilient, and be brave. Don't be afraid to fail, and think big. So the key takeaway is to empower yourself from within. You've got this. So that's pretty much all I have to share with you today. If any of you like to contact me, these are my contact details, or you can get more information from Malcolm or Clara. And you can email me, you can DM me, you can WhatsApp me, whatever you like. And if I can help with any of your questions, I will be more than happy to.